Good morning, y'all. My name is Patrick. It is Thursday, December 11th, and you are listening to the FTKT Morning Show. All right, I think we finally landed on a name for this thing. The FTKT Morning Show. Damn near sounds like fuck it. And you know what? Kinda is. You know what it is. I appreciate everybody tuning in so far and who has been tapped in with us this week. Lots of stuff going on in the world, in Indiana, in Indianapolis specifically, and that's what I'm going to be talking about this morning. So a story broke on Tuesday, and the headline in the Indy Star at least read, "Dozens denied oath of allegiance at Indianapolis naturalization ceremony." And to sum it up, essentially what happened is there were 100 people who had been going through the naturalization process, had completed every step in said process, and were preparing to complete the final step of that process, where they take the oath of allegiance and they receive their certificate of citizenship and whatever else accompanies that. On the day that this was supposed to happen, December 9th, 38 out of 100 folks there to complete this naturalization process and receive their citizenship were denied the ability to take the oath of allegiance at all to complete this process. This comes on the heels of a USCIS, which is a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, announcing that they would be halting immediately applications and asylum claims for folks coming from countries on this list, which includes Afghanistan, Burundi, Chad, Cuba, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Laos, Libya, Myanmar, the Republic of Congo, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Sudan, Togo, Turkmenistan, Venezuela, and Yemen. The current administration has deemed these countries high risk. That was earlier this year, but has come back into the forefront recently when in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, or in Minneapolis, the mayor, Jacob Frey, talked about supporting the Somali community in Minneapolis. And Donald Trump, the president of the United States, basically came out and called them everything but outright slurs. And thinking back to his first administration, falling in line with the rhetoric that he used then, talking about developing nations and calling them, quote unquote, shithole countries. So, this happening is not a surprise, I would say. The reality is that we see a lot on national news and media, things happening in Chicago, things happening in New York, things happening in D.C., Los Angeles, a lot of coastal places, and Chicago. Those things, I think it's really naive, and it is very easy to be naive in thinking that those things are isolated in those places and that they don't happen where you would not historically think there are large immigrant populations. But the reality is there are immigrants everywhere in this country. And to think that Border Patrol and Immigration Customs and Enforcement are not going to show up where you live and do the things that we see them doing in these larger metropolitan areas, we're fooling ourselves a little bit. I have seen and heard from a lot of folks who have run into or encountered ICE here in Indianapolis. So, and this has been happening since January. So this is not new. If you've been following me on social media, I wrote about an encounter that I had. Not nothing direct, but a situation near my home where I was aware of ICE presence, and lo and behold, a couple hours later, there was a situation at the place that I was. This is all part of this process of, I think I've seen this term like remigration bandied around, which is essentially ethnic cleansing of the United States of people who are not white, which technically would be every single person here because nobody is white. They're just people that don't have as much melanin in their skin. If you couldn't tell, this is something that is I am passionate about, and I am passionate about it because I am an immigrant. I am an immigrant via international adoption, and I am one of the lucky international adoptees whose adoptive parents ensured that I received my citizenship and went through and completed the naturalization process after I was adopted. However, this is just an estimate, but there are tens of thousands of adoptees who right now exist in our country as undocumented immigrants because their guardian, their adoptive parent, the agency who helped facilitate this adoption, whoever was involved in the process, did not take the required steps to complete that process for them. And when you are adopted internationally, you are reliant, when you're adopted at any point in time from anywhere, domestically, internationally, whatever the case is, you are reliant on the system and the people in power over you and in power over these systems to ensure that these processes are completed. And what is really, really terrible is that a lot of people did not do that. Who suffers the consequences of this lack of competence? It's the adoptee. And so there are a not insignificant amount of people right now from my community who are currently at risk of being deported to a country that they have never known because they were forcibly removed from there via adoption in the first place. And they were failed by the system and by the people put in place to protect them at multiple points in their life. And now they are going to suffer the consequences or are at risk of suffering the consequences. Well, they are suffering the consequences right now because part of this, like we talked about yesterday with the verification of voter citizenship status, this is part of an intimidation move. This is an intimidation play to make people, not just immigrants, but anybody who does not fit a white nationalist profile. It puts everybody at risk. And so, like, everybody's risk varies in terms of how high or how low it might be. But unless you hold a white nationalist ideology and identity right now, you are at you carry some level of risk. And I think the lower the risk, the less empathy we might employ for people who are at the highest end of that risk spectrum, like our undocumented family. So, we need to be paying attention to this shit. We need to be paying attention to things like this when they are happening, and we need to be calling it out. Because this is just the next step in a line of moves meant to disenfranchise voters, like mid-cycle redistricting, meant to intimidate folks from exercising their right to vote in order to help have a say in how we are governed and how we are supported by the system that was put in place to do so. And yeah, sorry, I got distracted. And yes, so that's the thing. One other thing I wanted to mention here from the Indy Star report. Shout out to Ryan Murphy for this article, but they quoted, let me see, Shibo Shao, a U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services official who was present at the Indianapolis event. And Shao was quoted as saying, "We just receive orders from the chain of command. I was in the military. Everything we do here in the federal government is just like in the military. Follow the chain of command," and so on. I bring this up simply to say that this is literally the exact same thing that they were saying, that the Nazi soldiers and officers were saying during the Nuremberg trials. We were just following orders. Just because you get an order from someone, if that goes against your moral values, you should be thinking about that before executing on those orders. Maybe you're the person that can be the cog in the machine that blocks people from doing the harmful thing and breaks the machine to the point where we can actually do something about it. Sniffly. Maybe that's you. Actually, I do one other thing. One of the countries on this list is Cuba, and I just wanted to really quickly say, spoiler alert, if you are watching Welcome to Derry and have not seen the latest episode, the penultimate episode, so just tap out now. Thanks for being here if you're still here with us. All right. If you are still here and you have been watching the show Welcome to Derry, you know that this was a very traumatic episode. And again, I mentioned Cuba because we got to pour one out for the homie Rich. Gone too soon. Probably was going to be gone because of, the continuity in this universe. But went out like a hero, like a knight. And I bring that up because they are dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis as like a E-plot in that show. And my God, the acting in this show from these kids, top notch. And I just got to say, we got to pour one out for the dude because he saved his girl. And you know what? May very well be the inspiration for a later hero that helps defeat the entity. I be watching TV sometimes. So if you're interested in stuff like that, hit me up and let's chat about it. If you listen to episode 6 with Baby Ebony, you know that we were talking about it. Let's watch TV together and talk about it. I love to talk about it. Hop in the Substack chat. Let's do it over there. Let's do it in the DMs, wherever you wanna have these conversations. We can do that. But I appreciate y'all being here. This is the FTKT morning show. We are going to be here every morning, Monday through Friday, talking about all things Indiana, Indianapolis, and identity. So I hope that your morning is what you need it to be. And until tomorrow,